Hello, and welcome to another replay analysis with Mr. Sunbeam, our boy today, who's going to learn how to play StarCraft 2 at a very high level. This is currently Gold League, if I didn't say so already, and we're going to help him get to a high level of gold. Hopefully, platinum, and maybe the moon, all the way to the moon, Sunbeam. To the moon with your MMR. It's going to raise like Bitcoin here pretty soon. You're like, Vibe, Bitcoin's only dropping. Shit. Alright, so let's see what you're doing. Bad analogy. Alright, so I want to see how long you take to make a larva, first of all. Larva first, Overlord second. Overlord's a bit delayed. Okay, I would say this. This is what I would say. So your drone is good. Okay, drone is great so far. Drone is amazing. But this is what you should do, honestly, when you open up a game, okay? If you're not doing this already, this is what the sequence should honestly be. Step number 1, when the game is going 3, 2, 1, and it's counting down, mouse over the hatchery, click the hatchery, make a drone right away. Like immediate drone making right off the bat. You did that, which is first of all, first things first, really good. Then grab your Overlord right after you make a drone. Grab your Overlord second and say, "Hey Overlord, go either like right there or go right there, anywhere on the side of the map." It doesn't matter where you click. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just start it moving, because your Overlord didn't start moving until about like 7 seconds, which is very fucking late. This is something you need to get better at, because it's going to fuck up all your scout timings later on as you get better at the game. So your Overlord needs to move like within the first second of the game. Drone first, make a drone first, and then immediately tell your Overlord. Again, you don't have to be precise. I do want you to move it eventually to right here, but you don't need to do that initially. You can tell it to go right there. Right there, there. Anywhere in this area. Like anywhere on the left side of the map. Or anywhere just that makes it go this direction. You just want it starting to go that direction. And then after you do that, if you want to take a moment to fix your drones and be like, hey drones, let's stack proper patches, that'd be great. So what you should be doing is this sequence. Make a drone, tell Overlord to start moving initially, and fuck with your drones for a moment. Make sure you start trying to get your good patches stacked first of all, the nice ones. Come back to your Overlord and then move it to where you need to move it exactly. And then progress forward, like for the rest of the game. Now, if all of this sounds overwhelming to you, and you're like, well, Vibe, I can't do all 3 of those things. That's too much. That's okay. What I would then tell you to do is make a drone first, ignore the drones after, and then tell your Overlord, take a moment to then tell it to move exactly where you want it to go, and then come back and fuck with your drones. That's also okay. Not as good, but it's still good enough to easily be good in Diamond, and even competitive in Masters. It's just that if you stack your close patches as a priority, like, if you get good at doing it fast, that is something that even GM players don't even do half the time, because they're lazy as fuck. But it's not hard. So, simple way you can improve your gameplay there if you do it that way. But I would say you did everything so far overall fine, other than you moved your Overlord super late. And it's going to make all your scouts now like 6 seconds to 8 seconds late or some shit, like 7 seconds late. Like, it's all just delayed scouts now, which is kind of not great for you. GMs are lazy confirmed. There are some lazy GMs, dude. I'm not even kidding. Like, they'll do builds that are just abusive, and, you know, that's just what they do. And they don't really try really hard to min-max all the little details. And players who play like that, right now, nowadays, in StarCraft 2, in the current era, might stick around for longer, because there's not as much balance nowadays than there used to be. But back in the day when this game was balanced, like every 6 months, players like that would always drop off super fast when whatever was like the broken build would get nerfed. If they have no like try-hard fundamentals. Okay, so you're doing what looks like Beta GM series build. You're going for like an early hatch, followed by a pool, followed by a very delayed gas. This is very Beta GM-y. So I'm going to take it that you're doing a Beta GM build here. It's already definitely Beta GM. I like it. I approve of your choice. Queens started relatively early after your pool is done. You're making drones still. You're not really letting your larvae sit there. You're doing a decent job. Your Overlord Scout should right now immediately be turning around and going to the cliff, I would say. Like, what you're doing there, that's going to die. This is going to die. So, to throw it out there and explain, this Overlord, all you wanted to do is, at the very least, scout and see if your opponent expanded. And if your opponent expands, that is huge info for you. And if you want to scout into their base a little bit, all you want to see is automatically this is information enough. Okay, watch this. So you had all the information. Just check it out. So your Overlord's going to the base, right? And I don't know if you caught it on the mini map, but watch this. So there's an SCV. So I guess it was an SCV earlier. I did see it earlier, but I guess it was an SCV. It wasn't a Reaper. I was thinking it might have been a Reaper I saw because I was pausing and shit. Either way, it's a SCV. Okay, cool. Cool beans. That's totally fine. Not a big deal. So far. Now you see the command center. And again, I'm doing this off of the mini map, not off of you actually having to look at it. And now your Overlord. So here's the thing. This is what you got to be super careful about, okay? Every second your Overlord is delayed is going to only give the Terran more time to make things to kill it. Same thing can be said about Protoss. Same thing can be said about Zerg. Queens, Marines, and Stalkers can all kill your Overlord, and it's going to only increase the chance that it'll happen if your Overlord is delayed. And this Overlord was delayed because you didn't move it out of your base until like 7 seconds in the game. And that's a lot of that is actually a lot of time early game. It's like 7 seconds is substantial in terms, if you think about like how long does a Marine take to build? It's 18 seconds. So think about how long it takes for 7 seconds if you take it off of that. Like that's like 7 seconds out of 18 is what? Like 40% of its build time? Or like 35% of its build time? Something like that. It's a fucking lot, essentially. And that's more time that he has to kill your Overlord. That's not good for you. So that's one thing you got to be super careful about. Another thing you got to be really careful about when you scout with an Overlord is you need to maximize the distance of the edges of your vision and not the center of the Overlord. So you'll notice a lot of newer Zergs that do things like this. Is a very new Zerg mechanic to do here. This is very new Zerg-esque. And what this means is that you're basing the scout off of the Overlord itself, like the actual unit itself, when you should be basing the scout off of the edge of your vision. Because you don't have to fly directly on the command center to see the command center. And you don't have to fly directly over this area to see what's going on. This is like basically all that's happening right now is like you're guaranteeing that your Overlord's going to die. And if your Overlord dies, it is not the most useful thing for you to want to have happen to you. It's going to slow you down. The only time I could ever argue it is worth it to sacrifice your Overlord in the early game is if you need to understand what the player is doing because you don't know yet. And I know this is Gold League, so I'm not going to go super hard into scouting info. Even though I already see what's happening, though, is your Overlord's just going to die. But think about this, okay? So there's so many things we could talk about with scouting. It goes, like, the rabbit hole goes super deep here with ways you can read what's happening. But all you need to know is your opponent is opening up with the command center. This thing is 400 minerals. Automatically, you are not getting all in by one base all in. And here's what this means. This is why this is relevant to you. If you're doing a B2GM build, 100% chance now you will have your 2-base roach safety roaches out in time before you get attacked by something that could potentially kill you. It is impossible for him to attack you with something before your roaches are out. Like, that could kill you. Because if he did attack you, it would be like 2 Marines or like a Reaper and maybe a Hellion or something like that. It would be very small armies. and your queen could easily push it away. It's not going to be like 4 tanks and 30 marines before your roaches are out. It's impossible to happen now. It's physically impossible because he's expanding. He is not going for a 1 base all in. So this is all the information you really need. But if you that's a lot of info right there to know that you physically can't die until your roaches are out now. That is amazing safety net for you. And now if we go deeper into scouting, a problem with your scouting is I'm glad you turned it off a little bit early, but you're getting so close to the air. Like, you could see the edge of this and get all the vision you need. Like, for instance, your overlord right now should be turning there, like going directly up if you want to scout that. But you take this, like, it's like, imagine like you take a flight on a plane and you go from California straight to New York, or you say, you know what, I'm going to go to Texas first and then I'm going to go to New York. What plane gets there faster? So it's like a detour, essentially, that you don't need to take. You already have all the info you need here. You know he went CC, and you know how early he made it based off the health of the building. So you don't have to go directly to it to scout it, essentially, is what I'm saying. Because all this does to you now is waste more time. Because in the time the overlord goes from here to here, you could have instead, like, you went from like there to there, where it is now to where it is there. Instead of making that exact line like that, you can make an exact line like this. Your overlord could probably be like right there. If you would have just went straight up. And if you're like right here, you know what you would probably have? Vision to see the edge of the racks already. Because look at where it is. You're behind where you would be if you were like right there. Which the difference of vision is like that much. And look at the difference of vision to here to here. You would see the racks already and you'd see what's going on. So you want to make sure you're maximizing your movement on your overlord when you scout. Otherwise, it's always going to die. And then when you scout this already, right here, this is so much info again already. You know what this tells you? This tells you a lot. This tells you that your opponent, number one, is most likely not double gassing really early for 2 reasons. This is where advanced scouting goes down the rabbit hole. Okay, again, we're going to try not to talk about this too long, but I just want to kind of let you know things. Think about this for a second. I'm not even telling you to turn around right this second, but if you did, you already know there's a depot right here. How do you know there's a depot right there? Think about this. Think about it logically. How do I know there's a depot right there, even though I haven't seen it yet? First of all, you need a depot before you can build the racks. It's a tech path requirement. Secondly, this dude is making a command center, which only insinuates that he's going to be making SCVs because he's going to macro. He's doing a macro opener so far. So if he didn't have a depot here as well, he would be supply blocked. And then, so this would mean this is his second depot. And, I mean, hypothetically, he could have 1 depot there, and this could just be open. But why does that make any sense either if he's going to block the ramp? Most likely there's a depot there already. And now the fact that there's a second depot there already too only further re-incentivizes that he's going to be going for a macro build and not a gas-focused aggressive build, right? Because he's not only making SCVs, he's making a command center, he's making a second depot already, so he doesn't supply block, but which is pretty normally timed because you got to base your supply off of some degree to your opponent's supply, and your opponent is going to be supply blocking if he doesn't make a second depot right now. But if your opponent has a second depot coming up like this, and he's got a command center coming up like this, and he's also, look at the barracks. Watch the barracks lights on the racks right here. Notice how they're flashing? Flashing, 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 flashing. That means he's making a unit. So if he's making Marines and fucking... he's got to reprint your base now. He's making Marines behind this, and he's making SCVs. He is not going gas crazy. He's doing... Like, there's no chance of an all-in happening right now. It is very macro-oriented, and all you're going to do to yourself if you go deeper into his base is, again, get your overlord killed. And you seeing a factory go down, or you seeing a second racks go down, changes nothing about your build. Now, if this was a speedling build, or something like that, like if you were doing like a diamond level or like a master's level speedling expand, I'd definitely be like, okay, try to push your overlord to the limit. Maybe don't kill it, but have an idea of how long it takes your overlord to get back to the cliff if a marine starts shooting it. But also try to scout and see if it's like a factory with a reactor or something like that. That's definitely higher level shit. But the reason why I'm telling you not to do this is because you can already know so much about what it is already, and your build doesn't change at all, regardless of what you see. The only thing that does change is if this Overlord dies, it slows your build down. It's the only thing that actually happens. And now you saw a factory. And even if you see a factory, immediately turn the fuck around. Turn around right now and go to the cliff. Because you need to know nothing else. And if you don't turn around, your Overlord's going to die. And now let's speed it up and watch it happen. And that is a waste of an Overlord. That is literally you just getting behind now. That is expensive early game. And it only makes sense to do that if your build needs to be... If your build is a reactionary, alterable build. And if you're doing beta GM, it's not that. Your build in beta GM is designed for safe versions of greed. And it's the same every single game. And the reason why it's designed that way is because it's an efficient playstyle that is super easy to play. And it puts you in the realm of playing efficient, just beats everything that's done inefficiently. But now what's happened when you lost that Overlord is that you've now created an inefficiency in your build. And you're not going to alter it either way. You're not going to alter it because it's Hellions. Yeah. You would have not altered it if it was Bio. It's the same regardless.
Vibu Heart.
Yo, Clark Kovic, thank you very much for the 4-month resub. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Much appreciated, man. Thank you. So be very careful with your Overlords in the future. Don't get in the habit of being like, fuck it. Whatever happens, happens. Oh, it's always dead. Don't do that. That's so bad. It's only good to do that if you do Speedlink styles that can be altered. And you can be like, oh, well, my opponent's doing something that is super greedy. Now I'm going to also be super greedy as a result of losing my Overlord because I sacked it so early. That's only makes sense then. Be very conservative with your Overlord if that's not your plan. Like if your build has no deviations, if it's going to be the same every game, you don't need to sack your Overlord. It just slows you down if you do that. So now let's go back to your base here and let's see what's happening with the Reaper. So here's an interesting thing. For instance, if you're like, well, Vibe, there was a Reaper attacking me, and I can't micro two things at once, dude. Like, I can't fucking move the Overlord and also at the same time deal with this Reaper in my base. I'd be like, that's okay. You know what you could do instead then? Get comfortable with the vision radius of how far you think an Overlord's vision is, and then tell it to move in an area where you're going to see the natural and the ramp, and then go back to the cliff as a shift command. So instead of going like this, shift command right here, and then shift commanding right here, how about you do this? Tell your Overlord, like when you initially move it from your base, you can send it up across the map and you can go like this. Okay, Overlord, from my base right now, move command to like right here, shift command right here, and then shift command right here. And the reason why is because if you move it to like right here, that would have enough vision. That would be like the shortest distance crossed from like going from your base to their base. Because if I tell you to go way down here, or if I tell you to go way over here, you're not going to see one or the other. If I tell you to go right here though, this is going to give you a direct line that goes directly to the fucking natural, but it also is close to the ramp. Because if I told you to go right here instead, if I said, hey, go right there as close to the ramp as possible, you're not going to see the natural. And seeing the natural is the most important thing of all things to see. So if I tell you to go here, that is the fastest distance possible in a direct line that goes from your main base to their natural. And then if you shift command it to go like right there, and then back, and then after here, you go right here. This would see the ramp at the main, and you would see, oh, racks or factory. You would literally see, if you scouted right there, your vision, like look how far it is. You would see the other side of the racks just barely being like right here in this area, and you can fall back and you can see what he's doing. And again, regardless of what you see is not a big deal, because I don't expect you to change your build based on what you see, so it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is this. And then anyone who says, Vibe, what happens if you don't see a natural? I said this many times in Beta GM. It's one answer every single time. You do the build exactly the same again, regardless, except for add a spine crawler. If they don't have a natural, just fucking build a spine. And then do the exact same build that you would have otherwise. Go right back down the same build every single time. And that spine crawler and your queens will buy you time until your 2 base roaches come out, and then you'll be fine. Guaranteed. And the reason why I know this is because the amount of time it takes for a Terran to tech up and get tech units out is very defendable for you to get roaches out. It's very defendable. One spine crawler never feels like it's enough versus a one base marine bunker all in that is proxied. I agree with you. If you are getting proxy bunker rushed, you actually need to make zerglings. If your opponent is proxying their, I've said this as well before. If your opponent is proxying in your face, then yes, you have to make zerglings because you can't just make drones and go, excuse me, please don't attack me for the next 3 minutes of this game or 2 minutes of this game. I'd appreciate it if you just sat there for a while. No, they're going to be attacking you immediately, even before your pool's even done. And if they do that, yeah, totally make lings because you have to. You have no choice then. But this is not a proxy. Okay, let's watch how you defend the Reaper. So anyways, your scout needs to be a lot better. Throwing the Overlord away. It's so important. Throwing the Overlord away is so bad. And I'm trying to give you like indications to like know how to speed it up because you don't need to do it off the Overlord itself, off the edge of the vision. Now about the Reaper, okay? Reaper gets to your base and he hits the hatchery for a while. That's nice for you. He runs around for a while, wastes a bunch of time. That's nice for you. Hits the hatchery again, wastes even more time. That is really nice for you. This is exactly why I tell you not to make zerglings, because players at this level of skill, generally speaking, they usually won't even go Reaper, and if they do, like, that was a complete missed opportunity for that Reaper right there. That Reaper could have honestly killed like 3 drones just now, or like 4 drones, but like maybe the 4th one before the queen pops out, but guaranteed at least 3. But he just fucked around doing nothing and shooting your hatchery for like almost 100 damage instead, which is a really waste of time. So I'm glad that you didn't overreact in any way, and I'm glad you're making drones right now. That makes me happy. The Reaper just dies. He ends up overall killing 1 drone. Your reaction to the Reaper, I would say, was fine. That was not bad. Make sure your queen doesn't stand around and sit there for a little bit. I would say you got like a B on that. Not an A, but a B. And the reason why is because you actually sat there for a brief moment and let a drone die. And I'm not telling you to micro the drone. I'm not telling you to micro the drone. But I am telling you after you injected the hatchery. So, think about it like this. Think about it like this. Reaper gets in your base, right? You need to make a choice right now. Either you're going to inject the hatchery right away, or you're going to push the Reaper away and then inject the hatchery. Now, I would say, for gold standards, for like lower level leagues, I would say you should just inject your hatchery right away and then tell your queen to attack towards the Reaper. And the reason why you should do that is because the last thing you want to do is just not inject for a long time and then forget about it. So if you injected right now, here's what you could do, okay? If I were you, this is what the easiest thing you could do. Green box your queen, tell it to inject with either the hotkey, like probably I would recommend using the hotkey. I do not recommend clicking the inject button, but green box it, hit hotkey for injecting, inject your hatchery, hold shift and right click the Reaper, or hold shift and A move the Reaper. They both work. Just don't right click and the green here and then right click and then green here and then misclick the Reaper 5 times and the Reaper suddenly up here and your queen's doing all these like shift Q walk commands. Don't do that. So make sure if you shift click, right click, it needs to be a red line that is on the Reaper, not a green line that's sitting here, because that's fucking bad because it's telling your queen, walk over there for a while. Don't do that. But if you were to inject your hatchery and then shift A move the Reaper itself and a red line appeared on the Reaper, your queen would be told to inject the hatchery, and then immediately after, you don't have to even control it. It just goes to attack the Reaper. But what happens is you inject the hatchery, which I liked, but then you stand there and you do nothing. And then you move your queen like 2 seconds later. So that's a command you could have set up immediately, and you probably would have saved that drone. Because this guy's micro is not the most fancy micro I've ever seen. And I really think the only reason why he killed your drone is because your queen sat there. I really think if your queen would have attacked his Reaper, he probably would have mismicroed it and shot your queen, or he would have just immediately ran away. Like, this guy was doing some fucked up shit throughout the game already. Otherwise, good defense. I'm glad. I actually am happy you injected it as a priority, though. That makes me happy. Okay, then you have a third queen coming out. You're still making drones. Now, this is the tricky part that a lot of people fuck up. The second you spend all your larva, you need to immediately, right after that, start your roach warren and your evo chamber. Larva first. Okay, yep. Everybody fucks this up. I don't know why, but everybody fucks this up. Spend your larva after your first inject. All your money goes into spending your larva, and then you build these buildings. This happens to everyone. I don't know why. I feel like maybe I don't word it correctly or something like that. But everybody messes this up. You have to spend... because here's the thing. When your larva inject pops off, you are not going to have enough money to do both. You will not have enough money to build 6 larvae into drones and overlords and build a roach warren and an evo chamber. You do not have that much money. You have enough money to do one of the two options. You can either spend your larva, or you can delay your larva and make your buildings first. And if you do this first, it makes your build start falling out of position, of good macro position, because now what's happening is your hatcheries are larva capping for like 10 seconds, and that's not good, because larva capping means your larva generation just stops from the automated generation of it, because the larva that you injected just sits there the entire time, which is really bad. And you can see it's already decently into the next inject, and then you don't even use these buildings until you're done droning anyways. However, if you make your larva first and then you make your roach warren and evo chamber after you spend all of your larva first, you have to then wait for just a few more seconds until you build up enough money to build your roach warren and your evo chamber. And here's the beautiful thing. Your roach warren finishes regardless, either right around the same time or shortly after, or rather, sorry, shortly before your droning is done. So this is what I'm trying to say. Let me say it in another way that doesn't sound confusing, because I know I just worded it weirdly right there because I fucked it up. If you make a roach warren right now and you don't spend your larva first, your roach warren is going to be done way before you're done droning the space. So the only way to even utilize this building properly would be if you cut drones early. And you don't want to do that. It's inefficient as fuck to do that. It'd be like saying you have 2 on each gas and only 11 on the mineral line, and you're going to make roaches now. You don't want to do that. So making this roach warren this early is going to give you the option to do that, but you don't want to do that. But instead, if you spent all this larva first, and then you built the roach warren, your larva doesn't have a hiccup in its production, and then you'll be hitting your larva. It will be like your droning will be all done, and you might have the final drones either in eggs ready to spawn on the buildings as your roach warren finishes, or you'll like have just hit full saturation on this base and your roach warren will finish. Like, it times the roach warren much better with the base. That's the whole point of when we build it. You don't want to build it really early so it's done way before you need it. But now with what's happened there is, your larva was delayed, so you already have a hiccup in your build now. This is now inefficient. It's gonna, I would say now your build, because of the overlord, your build was already maybe like 5 seconds behind. That was a little bit of a deviation in your income because you had to replace what died. And then now this was another like maybe 5 seconds behind. So if those two things probably made your build already now like 10 seconds behind where it should be. If you, assuming you did everything else perfect, right? And then also, you should be pairing these 2 buildings with 2 gases. But that's also why you want to make sure you don't fuck them up. You want to make sure you do these after you spend your larva. And then you build the buildings off of your inject. So because again, you really never, ever, ever, ever want a larva cap. And your gases are also pretty late now as a result of this. So you're going to have very delayed gas to actually make your tech with. By just a little bit. It's not that, I mean, I'm glad you took it eventually, but it's not that bad. Your third base timing was good. And another tip out there for players. Here's a tip out there for players. If you're someone that scouts your opponent has gone for no natural, you want to know the only thing you really need to do to make it really easy to not die? Build a second evo chamber and put your queen in the doorway. Or if you're afraid of your drones dying, you could also just build a second Evo chamber and put a queen in the doorway. Because if you're someone that thinks like, well, Vibe, those roaches barely spawned in time for those Hellions though. Well, what if you just built a wall here with a doorway that a queen could stand in on hold position? Then suddenly nothing can happen anyways. And it's so fucking cheap to do that. It's much cheaper than building these early. And again, your game is not like, oh, it's over, you're dead now. It's just one of those things that I would say is it's less efficient. Now, here's another tip, okay, I would give you. As we can see on the production tab, we see your opponent's going for Cloak Banshees, right? And I don't know if you're the kind of person that struggles with Battlecruiser builds, Cloak Banshee builds. I feel like you're going to. But here's something you can do as well that'll make your life really, 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 really way easier. If you want to, notice how you're starting to saturate your third base just after 5 minutes. You're more than able, if you don't know what build your opponent's doing, or if you think there's a chance they might be going air. And again, this is gold level mentality, right? So I'm not going to go super deep into analysis about what that means, because it's going to be shit you're not even going to think about in an average game that you play. It's one of those things that I would say if your opponent is not being super aggressive with ground units, or if they're just, if you just have the feeling where you go, I just want to be safe. If you build 1 spore per mineral line at 5 minutes on the clock, you will be protected from Cloak Banshees and Battlecruisers, and you will not have to worry about that shit like ever. Like, it will be so much easier to deal with. And it will be an option that will give you no micro required situation. Another way you could deal with it is if you had queens and an overseer, but that requires micro, and that's something not something I would recommend you to do. And Gold League, so if you're someone who struggles with what's about to happen to you a lot, just make sure you keep in mind, okay, at 5 minutes, I make 2 spores in my bases with new drones. 1 per base. Not 2 per base. 1 per mineral line. Middle of the mineral line. Put it there. Try not to block any patches either. So here's another tip that people don't understand. When I tell you to build a spore in the mineral line, keep in mind this is very important. Do not fucking build that spore right there. Do not build that spore right there. Do not ever build the spore to where it is touching the mineral patches. Always build it where it's touching the hatchery. And there's a gap between the hatchery, between the spore and the mineral patches. There is a 3x3 gap here. There's Jesus Christ. There is a 3 grid gap. I don't know why that was such a tongue twister for me, but my God. There's a 3 grid gap in this area. You could fit an Evo chamber in this area. And a spore crawler is a 2 grid building. So you can always have a gap between the spore crawler and the mineral patches. The reason why you really want to make sure you put it against the hatchery and not put it against the mineral line is because if you put it like right there, for instance, like right here, what happens is your drones now that want to mine the bottom patch have to run down and then to the right to mine it very awkwardly. And then the spore crawler, when it's placed there, the drones that want to mine the top patch have to either run down and then around and then up, or they would have to run up and around and down, because you would completely block off that little doorway right there with the spore crawler, because this mineral patch is too close to the spore. So that would suck ass for you, and that's not what you want to do, right? You don't want to make your mineral mining super inefficient because you put a spore in a bad spot. So always put your spore there or there. Like, put it against the fucking hatchery in the middle of your mineral. It doesn't have to be perfectly in the middle. Just put it around the middle. But put it against your hatchery because it doesn't disrupt your drone mining at all, really. Drones could easily run around it then because it doesn't disrupt the patches where it blocks them off. It does, yeah, it's much better to do it that way. And then if you put spores as well in your mineral line at 5 minutes, just add one on every time a new base finishes. The second the third base is done, put a spore in the mineral line. Easy peasy. But I already feel like you're going to take a bunch of damage to Banshees here in a minute. I just already see this happening. Because you're not scouting, and I don't want you to scout. And your build's a little bit delayed, so you're gonna have delayed hydras, and I feel like you're gonna be a little bit behind overall. Now, drone count, a good indicator that I like to give a lot of people to know that you're doing good or bad is you should be at 66 drones by 6 minutes. 66 drones by 6 minutes is a good indicator. Now, I want you to know as well, you can definitely go a lot fucking faster than that. 66 by 6 minutes is not like the best programmers in the world can hope to achieve this. It's just respectable is all it is. It's a good indicator that your build is not behind. This indicator, by the way, I would say starts to lose its value once you get to like Diamond League. It's really a good indicator to know if you're ahead or behind from bronze to platinum. So right now you're behind by 8 workers at 6 minutes to where you should be. So you could say, like, why am I behind by 8 workers at 6 minutes? That could be things like maybe you missed a little bit of your injecting here and there. Maybe you missed a little bit of your automated larva here and there. Maybe you just haven't spent your larva like this. You have 11 larvae sitting there. Now, here's a interesting thing a lot of Zergs don't know. I say this all the time, and I'll say it again because it's important. It's fucking important to know this. But I feel like if you didn't watch one of my previous videos, you might not know this. But a lot of people think larva comes from larva injects. They're like, oh yeah, Zerg, if you have bad larva, it means your injects are bad. And yeah, that's only 50% of it, but that is part of it, but it's not all of it. Another thing about larva that's really important is how much you're maintaining your larva automation. And to describe how that works, larva inject is all about when you inject the hatchery. And it's like, how often do you keep this going one after the other, after the other, after the other? How good are you at doing that? Larva inject lasts for about 30 seconds, and it gives you 3 larvae every 30 seconds. So you get all 3 at once at 30 seconds. And then are you really good about starting in the next one right away? That's larva inject. Everybody understands larva inject. It is a very common, knowledgeable thing for Zerg players. But larva automation is something no one really fucking thinks about. And larva automation is the exact same value of larva as larva inject, because larva automation gives you 1 larva every 10 seconds, which actually is better than larva inject because you get larva progressively up to 30 seconds. You don't have to wait for it until 30 seconds. And it still overall gives you 3 every 30, but it gives you 1 every 10. So if you use it perfectly, you have 1 drone longer alive for 20 seconds longer and 1 drone alive for 10 seconds longer. And then your 3rd drone is alive at the same time that the larva inject makes all 3. So larva automation's in theory even better than larva injecting. Now, larva automation, though, is more fragile than larva inject, and this is why. If you ever get to a point where your hatchery has 3 or more larvae on it, larva automation completely stops. So you literally, the process just comes to a complete stop. And there is no catch-up mechanic for larva automation. There's no inject for larva automation. It's not like something you can do where you're like, okay, now automate it faster. The chrono boost my hatchery, make it spawn faster. No, that doesn't exist. If you ever fuck up your larva automation, it is permanently fucked up all game. There's no way to get it back. And you could say, oh, well, what if I make a macro hatch? What if I make more hatcheries and make more automated larvae? Well, you're still spending money to do that, and your build is getting behind because of that. Because you're spending more money to just get larvae back that you didn't have to fuck up in the first place, right? So larva automation is super important to not fuck up. And you want to make sure your larva is always under 3 per hatchery, which is why you need to be really, really efficient about spinning your larva. And that you could argue that is another reason why your build might be a little bit behind right now, because you're not using your larva automation as well as you could be. And you're just not using your larva enough. Like, this is putting you behind. And think about it like this. If you lose 1 larva every 10 seconds per hatchery, you might as well say, okay, well, let's say 10 seconds go by since, like, let's look at this for a second. Just watch this really quickly. Okay, so right now you have 3 larvae total. That's not that bad. Now you have 7, and that means this hatchery has 3 larvae on it. So 553, you have 3 larvae here. And now this hatchery also is popping larvae off at 554, and this hatchery has over 3. And this hatchery right here still only has 1. So every 10 seconds that goes by is a missed larva per hatchery right now until you spin that larva. 553. Already, right now, you've already missed 2 larvae. Just on these 2 hatcheries. And this 3rd hatchery, right now, is very close to having 3 larvae, and an inject is also about to pop off. But I already know a 3rd larva automation is about to happen there because it's been enough time for it. So you're not generating... That's 2 larvae you're already behind. Not to mention your injects. Let's go to 613. Did you spin your larvae yet? No, you did not. You're at 15 larvae now. You're still capped, and now you are capped. So now that is 4 larvae plus now a 5th larva for this base because this base was capped at the last round as well, pretty much. Give or take a second or two. That's 5 larvae you're now already behind in just the last 20 seconds of the game because you are not spending your larva. And it's because you're panicking about a Banshee. Now let's go to the next round of time. 23 seconds. Still capped, still capped, still capped. That is now 8 larvae you are behind because you now add on 1 larva per hatchery and all 3 of them are capped. Thank God you're still injecting for the most part. Not this hatchery, but your third base and your main base are being injected still. That's decent. That's respectable for while you're being attacked like this. But you're falling so fucking far behind on your larva automation. You've already missed enough larva to have... It's the same... Like 8 larva already being missed is the same value, pretty much, aside from 1 larva, as all 3 of your hatcheries being injected because it's 3 larvae per hatchery, which is 9 larvae in total. And you're missing 8 already. And the only reason why you're missing 8, not 9, is because this hatchery was delayed. It wasn't as delayed as fast. So now go to 33. Have you spent it yet? No. The last 40 seconds of the game now, you've missed, what is that now, 11 larvae? What about the next 10 seconds? Still no. That's 14 larvae you're behind. Just on automated only. That's not even including your injects. That's just automated. You're just not macroing. Like, the problem is as well is you're just literally just not macroing anything anymore. The second you get attacked, you completely fucking fall apart and you just stop macroing. So this even further makes me, and this is exactly what I talked about like, what, 10 minutes ago or 5 minutes ago in this video that I'm making right here, where I said I guarantee you're going to fall apart to Banshees because this happens to a lot of players. Just look at the clock in your future games and go, the second I get to 5 minutes, I'm going to make my Spore Crawler, and I'm going to make 1 per base, and I'm going to not fuck my mineral lines up. So the way you built it, I love it. I love the way you built that. That is perfect. You have a gap between your minerals and the Spore, and you built it against the hatchery near the middle of your mineral line. That is fucking perfect. Do that every time. The way you built these Spores, fucking incorrect. Even if this mineral line was protected properly, what you just did here to this base is the only way drones could mine this patch. They'd mine this patch perfectly. They would mine that patch mostly perfect. That's still okay. But this patch would be mined like this. A drone would have to go like this. Down. Around it. Every time. It would increase the distance even further, and it would be really fucking inoptimal. This patch, same thing. This patch would be fine. This patch would be fine. But that patch would have to be mined like this. Go around it. Go around it. Drones would be mining this base like absolute shit now. Not to mention, if you build these spores while workers are in the mineral line too, let's say you built it and a drone is currently mining this patch right there. You would lock it in and it couldn't move anymore. It would be stuck in this box. It would be trapped in the box. And a drone would be trapped in that box. You don't want to fucking do that to your workers. It's super inoptimal. So build that shit against your hatchery and you only need 1. You literally only need 1. You do not need to go multi-spore per base. Because the reason why you only need 1 is because by now you should have hydras. And then your hydras can easily fucking make the difference of the air difference. Like, oh, he's got 2 Banshees loses to a Spore and a Queen. A Battlecruiser will beat a Spore and a Queen. But by the time a Battlecruiser comes out, you could easily have hydras out by then too. A Battlecruiser builds a lot slower than a Banshee. And by the time he has like 3 Banshees, which is probably about the same time as a Battlecruiser, you could have hydras by then too. And 3 Banshees could actually beat a Queen and a Spore, but they would... Either way, a BC or 3 Banshees would both get fucking owned. Like, they would take a ton of damage to a Queen and a Spore. They would not just kill it and be like, I'm still full health. It'd be like, okay, I won that fight, but I have 40% health left. Like, it's... a Spore Crawler actually is ridiculously good at killing shit. And a Queen supporting it is even nicer when it's just auto-attacking behind it. But yeah, 1 Spore per base is all you need, dude. 1 Spore per base. This is so excessive. You're losing so many drones. You're making so many spores right now, which is only making you lose even more drones. And you're not spending your larva until right now, like a full minute later. You literally just spent it almost... This is like 50 seconds later. Or like 55 seconds later. Because you started these... What do you start these at? You started at 6:45, and you hadn't actually spent your larva since 5:53, which is 52 seconds of difference. You waited 52 seconds. Right? That's 8 seconds difference, so it's 8 seconds off a minute, so it's 52, right? I think that's right. 52 seconds of delayed larva usage. That is so much fucking time that it like do 5 times 3 is 15. You missed 15 larvae pretty much automated because you got 50 seconds times 3 hatcheries because it's 1 round. It represents 5 because you have every 10 seconds is what matters. And then you missed a couple injects here and there too because you were distracted. So you're down. I would say right now in your build overall from the missed injects you have, which is somewhat, and your missed automated larvae, which is a lot, you're probably down right now by like 27 larvae or like 25 larvae already. That's a lot of larvae that you're just missing. If you think about that in terms of hydras, that's 50 fucking supply. So remember, like, look at your drones. Look how stupid they mine. 1 drone per 5, or one spore per base at 5 minutes. Remember that. Now you're having dipshit drones. That drone actually somehow fits. Good for him. But this drone over here is a complete fucking idiot. So don't do that in the future. It's just not. Make sure it's always touching the hatchery. It's so much better. And now that is fine. Is that fine? Did you put that against the wall? I can't actually tell, dude. That looks like it's questionable. I can't. It's hard to say. I don't know if there's a gap there. Make sure if just remember, if there is a gap, make sure there's not a gap in the future. You definitely want to make sure there's only 1 doorway to your base, not 2 of them. I can't really tell if that's a wall or not. I feel like it's not, honestly. I feel like a Marine or a Hellion could fit through that. Or a Zergling or something. That doesn't look like a wall to me. And now your build is just super far behind. Like, what we can say about what I can tell you about this game is the minor mistakes you've made are very fixable. Like your Overlord mistake and your building timing mistake and your automated larva mistake. Or like before you were like you weren't even really doing that bad. You were actually doing a pretty good job with your overall injecting and your spending before you got attacked. You fell apart entirely though once you got attacked. So just know this: the easiest way to defend yourself when you get attacked is do this. When you take a third base, make sure you have again 5-minute rule: spore, 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 1 per base, and then put 1/2 of your roaches between your in front of your natural, and the other half of your roaches right around your third base. Just spread them out half. So if you make 8 roaches, put 4 here, put 4 like right there. And you could literally AFK defend yourself almost every single fucking time to all forms of harassment. And then in the meantime, go back to doing things like spreading your creep, making your fucking drones, making your hydras eventually, doing your Bronze GM sequences. And then your roaches will only be reinforced really fucking quickly. But it will make it really, like, AFK friendly, essentially, to defend Hellion harass or Banshee harass, or simultaneous Hellion and Banshee harass, which is what happened to you this game. And you don't even have to be there. If this guy flies Banshees and your Spore and your Queen, and he drives Hellions into your roaches, and he's Gold League as well. I saw how you microed that Reaper. If he tries to multitask you, he's just going to lose everything in 2 fucking seconds. And you're going to AFK kill everything because Roaches kill Hellions and Spore Queen kills Banshee. Easy. So just set up a defense for yourself that's more doable. 1 Spore as well. Do not make 2. Please don't stop making 2. This is not standard. This is like excessive. It's overkill with your Hydras. I would say gas too fast as well at your 3rd or your 4th base. I understand you're making a lot of drones right now all at once, and that's fine. It's not the end of the world here, but I would say definitely just probably mineral priority first. Like, because here's the thing. You're under mineral priority and you built the gases, right? And now what are the gases going to do? Are they just going to sit there and do nothing? But then that's inefficient. That's inefficient. You could have been mining minerals longer. Or are you going to saturate the gases right away? Then you're really undervaluing your minerals and going crazy on the gas. Make sure you do a mineral priority. But overall, not that big of a deal because you're still making a lot of drones either way. It's not the hugest deal. Now, your opponent has an army size that is comparable to yours. And this is, again, something that players need to understand. His army is actually better than yours. Marine Medevac scales better than Hydralisk and Roach, and tanks behind it scale way better than Roach. And the reason why that is because it's more expensive. Marine medevac tank is more expensive, not only in time, but also in resources than Hydralisk and Roaches. Mainly because of the tanks, honestly. And like what this means to you is if you are tied in supply, or really close to supply with your opponent, and he's got a Marine tank medevac army, and you have a Hydralisk Roach army, what really should be happening right now is you should actually be at like 200 supply when he's at like 150. So you should just have more than you do because your army is cheaper in terms of how long it takes to make it, and it's cheaper in terms of how much it costs to make it. Because think about it like this: what do you got to do to make this army? You got to make a Roachborn, a Hydroden, and a Lair, and then you just spam out units out of your hatcheries. Your opponent needs to make multiple racks with multiple add-ons. He needs to make a starport with add-on. He needs to make maybe multiple factories with add-on. That's just to set it up. Your build essentially would be like the best way to describe what your build is like would be like if this guy would have went for pure barracks with just Marine Marauder only and medevacs. That's kind of like what your build is by just going Roach Ravager or like Roach Hydra. Or like even better, it would be like it would almost like be like if he's going just mass Marine Marauder, no medevac, no tank, to a degree. Like he just has more tech units in his army and it's more expensive. That's the point I'm trying to make here. So it is an army that should scale slower than yours. Not only does it build slower, it scales slower because it costs more. So you should always have more. You should never look at the game and go, well, I had more supply, so I should win, right? No, because your army is actually inflated like fucking crazy because Roach Hydra is so easy to make. Roach Hydra is so fucking easy to make. So it's an army that needs to always be overwhelming your opponent, which is why it works correctly. If you get to a position of the game like this where your opponent has like equal supply to you, you should feel like something is definitely wrong in this game for you. And we already kind of talked about the earlier setup of this game for you, and something was definitely wrong for you. That was awful awful mid-game for you, pretty hard. And now if you engage this, his army is going to obliterate you. This fight, guys, here's a disclaimer alert. Zerg is going to get fucking washed off this fucking map like a little grease stain or some shit. Zerg is dead right now in this fight. The only way Zerg doesn't die here is if Zerg turns around and delays and tries to make more army. Zerg is not going to win this fight. It's not even going to be close. Terran might lose like a tank and like 10 bio units, and Zerg is dead. And if you don't believe me, watch. How did I know that? How did I know that was going to happen? I haven't seen this replay yet. It's brand new to me. Yet I called it exactly what would happen there. The reason why I knew that is because Hydra Roach scales like fucking garbage if your opponent has even anywhere remotely close to the same supply as you. You need to be overwhelming them to make this work properly. So, the way that works is again, you need to have better macro throughout the game to get to the point that you're at, which is, again, we talked about all the ways we could help fix that in the earlier stages of the game. But secondly, if you actually get to a point later on in the game where, let's say the Terran actually has, like, let's say 180 supply and you have like 200, and the Terran's done a good job maintaining a little bit of it to a degree of setting up an army, you should be able to lose your entire army and then fucking remax in 1 second. Zerg should be able to remax. And if you can't, again, that's a macro problem. So if you're always going to be under max and you're always going to be around the same supply as your opponent, there is a fundamental problem with your macro because your army scales faster than your opponent's. And we can clearly see that there is, because again, I'll reference one more time all the problems we already talked about earlier in this game. But we also see a moment here where we have 2,500 minerals and 2,000 gas in the bank that is not able to be spent. And let's look at your bases right now. You have a hatchery not being injected. This hatchery didn't have a queen for a while because it died. And this queen up here is maybe the brand, like, we didn't even look at your injects for a while, but if we went back and looked, this queen might have been a queen you made out of this hatchery that has 150, and now this queen has 60. This queen over here is injecting right now, and it only has 40, so good for that. This queen over here has a 90 and it has no inject. And this hatchery doesn't even have a queen. So you're definitely missing tons of, and that's not even including. We talked about one time only from like 5:53 to 6 minutes and 45 seconds or something, or 44 or whatever the fuck it was. That was like so much missed larva in that 1 minute of the game only at that point. We haven't even talked about how much you might have missed since then, where you might have not been making units and your larva might have been sitting there for long periods of time. You've really got to stay on top of your larva. It is so fucking important. The fact that you're, before you took that fight, at 10 minutes and like 50 seconds, right here, the fact that you only have 180 supply by 1050 is very, very, very late. You could honestly max out in gold. Like, what was I doing in Gold League? Like 945 maxes in Gold League, I think it was what it was. Like a full minute faster than this, as the quota, the average. And again, remember, like, I'm not going to always repeat everything I said. I'll just say I'll reference it one more time because it's way faster, because I'll just repeat myself otherwise. If I really broke it all down again. Spore crawlers at 5 minutes and a spread of roaches. Fucking easy ass way to not lose your economy early and not fall behind. And now, from this point in the game, the level of difficulty for this game just went from like a 2 or a 3 out of 10 to like a fucking 8 or a 9 out of 10. And the reason why is because you are now in a position that is super hard to come back from because you're so far behind. Despite the fact that you're ahead in supply, this does not mean you're ahead in the game. Your army does not scale as well as the Terran does. And you're never going to transition off of it, nor do I want you to. I want you to stay on this army the whole game. I just want you to make more of it faster, because you should be able to do that, because Zerg scales faster than Terran does. So the fact that you're always going to have equal supply, or maybe, God forbid, even now at this point, less supply than your opponent when you take fights, you're just going to die, essentially. You have a very low chance to win the game now. Like, you're never going to really break him. Every fight is going to be a steamroll for Terran, in Terran's favor. Here comes another one. The only way you might win the fight is if Terran ever like splits his army up too much and overextends into a new army for you. But I mean, you just lost your whole army and he's already at your base, so it's going to be really hard for you to remax. Like, or really hard for you to reinforce, rather. As you can see. It's just like brutal for you. It's rough. And now this is the point of no return, because your Roachborn just died, and your upgrades just died, and your mineral line is compromised. And now you have no control of the game, because now that hole that you have is only, it's like digging your grave essentially at this point, because now you had a chance to win the game up until this point now, to a degree. Like, theoretically, you really were dead already. You were dead when you took that fight right there. But what I'm trying to say is as soon as your opponent gets fortified in a position that is like this, where every second that goes by, your economy just goes down, and your infrastructure of your base dies. When your base actually starts dying for real. Not your creep, but your actual base. Once your expansions start dying, and your upgrades and your production starts dying, you lose the game. You just fucking die. So now that this is all compromised, this is, again, like, the game is over here in just a moment. But this is, like, this is point of no return. You can't really come back from this. The only way you could is if you do some miracle fucking moves where, like, you do some type of a counterattack with, like, a Nidus with lurkers, and you somehow simultaneously have lurkers here with Vipers abducting tanks into them, and you stalemate it out, and you somehow turn it around on the Terran, which is super fucking hard to do. And it's not something that even, like, a Masters player can even do, honestly. Like, that's, like, pro level shit. Or, like, GM level shit at the very least. It's super hard to take the game back into control from this kind of a position now. Like, you're just fucking dead 99 times out of 100. So it's really, how do I prevent myself from getting here? Is really the question you should be asking yourself. And the answer is all the things we talked about already. 5-minute spores is probably the biggest thing I can tell you. That'll be like life-changing for you. Suddenly the game will get so much easier, and the Terran will be like, God damn, the Zerg is amazing at defense, and you're just like, did I just defend something? What? I wasn't making drones. I just heard things explode, but my drones are all still alive. Okay. Like, literally, that's what will happen. The Terran will be like fucking taking this like super hard course to like attack you, because being aggressive with multi-pronging, it's not easy at all, especially in fucking Gold League. You literally watch your Terran opponent throw the game in the garbage. And then if watching him do that, because you have spores at 5 minutes and your roaches are scattered around the front of your 2 bases, and then as you build more hydras, you only increase the scatter because you're like both sides of the roaches grow by like hydra reinforcements and shit. You would just have a moment where you would be the guy now to go to classic versions of BetGM series where you have one roach run around both sides of the map, attack the newest expansion, and then there would never be enough supply for Terran, and that would actually be moments where it's like, okay, Zerg's at 200 and Terran's at 120. And then that's how it's supposed to happen for Roach Hydra because it scales faster than Bio. Scales faster than everything in the game. The only thing that the only time you should ever have an opponent who has the same supply as you when you're doing BetGM series, when you're the Zerg player, is when you're playing another Zerg player. Because then you're both having the same unit comps. But if you're playing against a Terran player or a Protoss player, you should always be scaling faster than them because Zerg armies scale faster than Terran and Protoss armies, especially if you're making mass Roach Hydra. It's such a supply inflated army that is not worth its weight in its own supply if you are at the same supply as your opponent. It's only worth its weight if you're overwhelming your opponent's supply. Because think about it like this. When it comes to Roach Hydra versus Immortal Archon, whatever, or like Marine Tank Medevac, or just straight up mech for Terran, those armies, you might as well give them like plus 30% more value, and that's what it actually is like in Zerg numbers. So if a Terran army is actually saying it's worth 100 supply, you might as well think it's worth 130 versus Roach Hydra, because it's going to be worth, it's just worth more. Just because a unit is worth 1 supply doesn't mean it costs the same. That's actually a fact of the game. A lot of people don't think about the game like this either, but it's very true. You could have an army that is 200 supply and another army that is 200 supply, and one army only costs 10,000 resources, and one army costs 20,000 resources. That is actually real in this game. This game is not perfectly balanced in the sense that supply is always worth the same value of resources. Some units are worth less resources than others, and the reason why it works like this is because inside StarCraft 2, units that are the same supply cost as others, but they have a shorter build time, are units that you can inflate your supply with faster, like roaches and hydras. Look at the build time of a roach. Or fuck, I gotta go back a little bit. Look at the build time of a roach. It is 19 seconds. Look at the build time of a hydra. It is 24 seconds. Look at the build time of a medevac and a tank. It is 32 seconds. And a medevac is 30 seconds. Now you're comparing 17 seconds plus 24 seconds to 30 and 32. Now, obviously, a tank is actually a 3 supply cost unit. It's not a 2 supply cost unit, but a medevac is a 2 supply cost unit. And it is also more expensive than a roach and a hydra. The point I'm trying to make here is again, his army is more expensive, and as a result of that, it's more powerful, but the trade-off is it takes more time to build it. So if it takes longer to build it, that's where you have supply inflation advantages, which is what Roach Hydra gives you. So that's why you need to always be ahead in supply, because if you're not, it means something's fucking wrong with your macro. And we broke it down as to what it was already throughout this game. So I hope that makes sense of StarCraft. You're playing an army that is very, very maxable, and it's very A-movable, which is why I also tell you to do it for Zerg. It's the most A-movable army Zerg has. So hopefully that helps you understand where you're going wrong and what should be happening and what your game should actually look like, because you should never think, Terran's at 140 and I'm at 154. I'm doing great, because you're not. If Terran's got 154 of like power fucking units and you got 140 of power units and you only have 14 more supply than him of Roach Hydra, at that point you should honestly have like 180. Again, you should be thinking that like Terran's army is worth like 30% more than what it actually says it is. It's actually fucking crazy. So if you guys both max out, his army is actually worth probably something more equal to like 260 supply worth of Roach Hydra, which is more than you can make. So that's where the remax comes in, because you can remax, and his army will slowly drop if you're good at macroing. Okay, anyways, guys, I hope that made sense. I hope you guys understand more about StarCraft now, and I hope this helps gold players out there like you, Mr. Sunbeam, understand more about what's going on with you in games and helps you play better. And the Spore Trick is going to definitely help you with this, with the 2 Roach idle forces with Spore Trick at 5 minutes. I hope that helps a lot. If you do it, it definitely will. It'll fucking crush so many players that play the way this guy just did to you. But good luck in the rest of your games, dude. I hope, I would, you know, again, I wish the best for you. Thanks for doing this replay analysis. Much love. I know it's kind of sometimes intimidating to be scrutinized by me live on a broadcast, but hope you enjoyed it. And good luck to the rest of you guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Till then, peace. See you guys.